Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's coffee break. Today, we will take a look at security operations as a whole. But first, I'd like to introduce myself and our panel experts. I'm Megan Reed, the VP of Marketing at NetGain Technologies, and joining me today is Scott Logan, Director of Security at NetGain. Scott has over 40 years of experience in the technology industry. 10 of those years are specific to IT security. Also with us is Tim Smoot, Senior Systems Engineer at Arctic Wolf Networks. He has over 25 years of experience in the IT industry. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having us, Megan.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, so to kick us off, I would like to start with our first polling question. Out of these 5 categories, what do you feel is your organization's biggest struggle? Scott and Tim, while we give the audience time to respond, give me your perspective on the current threat landscape. Scott, I'll start with you.
You know, a lot of the businesses that I work with continually have issues where they just don't have the expertise in place. They've got great IT folks, don't get me wrong, they're very strong engineering capabilities, but they just don't have the security understanding to be able to properly position tools, to be able to properly provide information and direction in making a security posture more protected, more secure. I think that's some of the challenges that are out there right now that I think are most relevant.
Tim, anything to add?
Yeah, I would agree 100%. Probably the one that comes front to mind with respect to the threat landscape today is, you know, we know that a lot of folks have been either forced or decided to really roll that work from home type functionality, and in doing so, they've had to do it quickly. And anytime you add speed to deployment, you introduce some deviations from your standard operating procedures, some quality control checks and things of that nature. So I think the threat landscape has really broadened, and it's kind of thinned out the ability for organizations to be more articulate about what's going on with respect to threat surfaces as well as security posture as a whole.
Awesome. Well, let's close this poll and see how the results came out. So it looks like majority, 70% of individuals are struggling with that continuous security improvement. I think that will be part of our discussion today. So let's jump in here. We want to jump into what it means to take an operational approach. So Tim, I'm going to pass the baton to you at this point.
Yeah, certainly the understanding and the ability to kind of see your security profile and or your tools as one actionable data set is probably the most beneficial realization that most organizations come to the conclusion of. You know, in the real security world, I think sometimes we get pushed into corners thinking that, you know, just the firewall log or just the network log, or, you know, this log or that log is specific or more important than the other. The truth is information is power when we're talking about security. So being able to see all of those different aspects of your overall information base that as it relates to security, and some of those things don't necessarily specifically at front of mind think they're security related, but seeing and combining all those together in one actionable data set really does help a lot in actually addressing your threat surfaces.
Totally agree, Tim. You know, when I work with businesses, I constantly see that they've got the tools, they've got the ability to be able to react to the information. The problem is that the tools are either not set up completely. They're only about 10 to 20% of their actual deliverable that's been established in the tool, or that the information that's being provided by the tool is just not leveraged by key personnel, by people that can actually make great decisions on the information that's provided. If you look at Target back in 2017, when Target was influenced and was attacked, that they had the tools in place. They just didn't have the people in place that were able to leverage the information to prevent the attack. That's what I see constantly in the business place right now. It's certainly a struggle and a challenge in a lot of the organizations. And as organizations prepare for their attacks, as they try to position their security, they have to keep in mind that it's not just an 8 to 5 security challenge. It's a 24/7. The attackers are up at 3 a.m. and that's when they're probably knocking on the door the hardest, trying to infiltrate their network. And so it requires an amount of security coverage that is consistent throughout that 24/7 process, keeping eyes on the attack, keeping eyes on the information, being able to properly put security in place where it needs to be done. And I think that's another one of the major challenges that businesses have today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, when we start looking at all of the different breaches that have happened, one of the interesting and completely not included parts of that information is what time of the day it happened. The truth is that, you know, there's a huge investment in organizations for IT people across the board. Doesn't matter if they're infrastructure focused or they're software focused or security focused. The truth is there's a huge investment in those people, but there's also a very big investment by those individuals to be focused, or not be focused, but be jacks of all trades. When we're talking about security, going back to your point about the Target breach, the truth is that even if we've made an investment on a dedicated security individual or individuals, the truth is we probably don't have the luxury, most organizations don't, of dedicating time to those people that we've invested in to provide them with the ongoing training, the experience, and the up-to-date capabilities that they need to see these new threat surfaces and or threat vectors. And that's really difficult for these folks to be actionable and capable of doing their job on an ongoing basis because of that.
I agree. And how many times do you come across an organization that has an IT guy trying to wear a security hat, or the compliance officer is trying to do more than just manage compliance? It's really unfortunate for a lot of businesses that are in the SMB lines that have to force those operations, those controls, that particular job function onto somebody that's really not prepared to manage that type of thing. They just don't have the expertise to be able to drive the business where it needs to be driven.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it that when we look at the security industry as a whole, the amount of jobs that are open just keeps getting exponentially higher. The other challenge that goes along with that, though, is the fact that there are so many open positions. Even a good security individual, more than likely, you get them on staff and you just turn over the hourglass for the time that they're going to be moving on. That doesn't make them bad people. You know, everybody's trying to do the very best they can, not only in the job that they do, but also provide for their families. But when we look at security as an operational aspect, we really have to think about that long-term approach. And sometimes looking at that continuous improvement and the thought process of integrating security into our day-to-day operations as opposed to something we do after we do everything else can really be beneficial.
I totally agree. And you know, and having the right people in place, having those security experts, the certified people that understand exactly what the security controls mean, how the security controls need to be adjusted for the enterprise so that the security posture is properly aligned. That guidance is so beneficial to a business. Having a good security posture isn't something that you just turn on. It's not a light switch. It requires a lot of pieces to be moved. It requires a lot of controls to be adjusted so that the business operates effectively, efficiently, and securely. And that guidance is one of the key factors of establishing a strong security control.
Yeah, and the one word that I didn't hear you say, but I feel is without a doubt one of the most important ones is effective. Right. So when we look at all of the different words that relate to any part of our IT infrastructure, effectiveness has to be one of the things that results in what we do. And when I say effectiveness, we go back to looking at all these different pieces and parts that contribute to your security posture. And if we can parse through that information on a quick and effective way, the outcomes are much more articulate and they're much quicker. So that approach of looking at everything together as one correlated data set really contributes to our security being something that kind of runs in step or along with our business, as opposed to something we do secondarily.
I know. And if we look back at that poll, 70% of the people thought that security improvement was their biggest challenge. And it's true. I mean, I see it all the time. I see organizations, they establish an understanding of their risks, they establish their understanding of their vulnerabilities, but it's a single point in time, it's a snapshot. And there's no adjustment, there's no remediation, no mitigation factors that are executed in order to improve that posturing. It's a constant challenge, and it can't just be a one and done thing. It has to be constantly washed, rinsed, and repeated, so that you're constantly reevaluating what's going on. You're making new mitigation, new remediation factors, and then you're reevaluating those. Have you properly secured what you thought you secured? Those are challenges that businesses face all the time. I totally agree with that poll.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that when you do these kind of polls with respect to security, the results are almost always pretty much the same. And the thing that I would contribute to that as well is that it is coming to the front of a lot of people's minds, right? They're starting to recognize how important security is. At Arctic Wolf, about 70% of our customers that we onboard have extremely good security tools implemented, but 70% of those actually have some kind of a breach in process as we're onboarding them. So we can't really take the approach that people aren't doing a good job or they're not trying to do a good job. We have to take the approach that there are pieces and parts that need to be better articulated and certainly better implemented in order to contribute to that overall security posture, which again goes to that ongoing security improvement. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's one that if you take that security operations approach and leverage someone like Arctic Wolf or NetGain, you can certainly see how that benefits an organization going forward.
Good point.
Yeah, so if I were to kind of sum up your discussion there, it sounds like, you know, there's lots of tools, there's more and more awareness, the budget is being available for IT security more and more, but, you know, taking this security operations approach and paying attention to these 5 pieces here, and then working through that continuous improvement, right? That's the way to achieve the cybersecurity effectiveness that businesses need. Is that fair?
100%.
As we kind of wrap this up, you know, if you do think of any other questions after today's webinar, feel free to reach out to us at NetGain. There is contact information on the screen, so if you do have any, feel free to reach out to us. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Scott. Really appreciate your insights today, and thank you everybody for attending the coffee break on IT security. Enjoy the rest of your day.